I drive my car up to the lake as if there's someone to awake. I haven't been to bed for days, I live in a twilight haze. And I set my heart to the setting sun, and I hope that no one else has done it. And the drinks are never far, open up the bar. I miss you every single day. I wait until it's dark.
So just wiggle that around until you're comfortable with it in this position and what have you. And we can begin.
Lovely.
So Steve, just saying you're not a morning person. Damn.
Definitely not a morning person. I used to get up early to go rowing back when I was at school. And it really put me off getting up early.
Yeah, fair enough. Hey, those swimmers and rowers, both of them know how to punish themselves. It's brutal.
I think they enjoy it, mate.
Yeah, true.
Once you get all those endorphins and whatnot going, perhaps.
Hey, Milton, I've forgotten once again to switch off all of the fridges and stuff. Cool. I can hear that kind of background hum. Hey, hopefully the camera keeps going throughout all of this. All right, let's crack into it. So, you have a business called Forbury.
Correct.
And Forbury, correct me if I'm wrong, is a tool, a cloud kind of application thing, which helps professional. I know this took a while. Professional software. Professional real estate people. Like it helps them valuate, right?
Yep.
Properties.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's a software tool used by institutional investors and property valuers to help assess the value of a commercial real estate.
Yeah. And the unique thing about Forbury is that it's cloud-based and it's not as reliant on a off-the-shelf software or the... what was the other side? The other side is like the spreadsheets and stuff where errors can kind of creep in.
Yeah, so we've kind of been on a journey over the last, we're going to say 20 years, where I was originally doing some consulting, basically building spreadsheets, and the opportunity came to start Forbury by basically creating a spreadsheet that I could use and license. And over the last 8 years, we've been sort of migrating what is quite a heavy sort of calculation-centric workbook into the cloud.
Yep.
So we've kind of got an Excel interface and a cloud back end. The cloud back end does all the calculations.
Yeah. And the reason why this is kind of so unique and stuff, so a lot of those things, like to do the calculations, they're kind of constantly changing.
Yeah, it allows us to, the back-end calculation engine, we can continue to modify.
Yeah.
If you look at spreadsheets, people love using spreadsheets for all sorts of things, and they used to use, they still do heavily use them for commercial real estate assessment. We found, obviously, selling a spreadsheet, you've got these isolated copies of files around the place that are prone to errors creeping in over time. So we created a system to help manage those spreadsheets, but more importantly, manage those the calculations, and so we can change the calculations in the back end, and then instantly.
So are those kind of almost like real time kind of things?
Yeah, we're not quite at real time yet because the calculations are pretty intense. There's a retail property that has 500 tenants, which is something in Australia you can have up to 1,000 tenants in some of these big commercial properties. Yeah. That you're reporting back, I don't know, tens of millions of data points, and so our goal is to actually get that to be real time, but it still takes us a few seconds to calculate.
That's a ridiculous amount of data points. Holy moly.
Yeah, it is. It'll be interesting to see how AI, because there's a lot of assumptions that go into, trying to assess the valuation as well. And at this point, I don't think it lends itself particularly well to AI because every, commercial asset is kind of different. And so trying to gather up enough data points to actually automate the processes will be quite difficult.
Yeah.
And the actual valuation of the assets is generally based on the cash flows of the asset. So you've got to understand all the leases in order to understand the value.
Yep, which ultimately are based on human interactions and relationships, kind of, aren't they?
Yeah, and then it gets more complicated because people can actually modify leases to in negotiations. So you've got to count for all these different types of things that can happen within a lease document being written.
Yeah. Far out. No.
So an AI would be based on mechanical protocols. So it's going to leave out all the human stuff.
Yeah, we sort of throw around the idea of how you would get to an automated valuation, and it is possible. It's just how do you rely on that valuation when there's so many variables? It's such a local thing. A shop on the corner of, if it's a 100 square metre retail shop in Christchurch, it is different. Within one end of the street to the other end of the street, location really matters with real estate.
Yep. We understand that, don't we, Dave? From the cafe point of view?
Location? Yeah. Yep. So, Steve, when you kind of noticed, like you said, it was almost a 20-year journey. So were you from the real estate side of things or the software side of things? You were more on
neither.
On neither.
Yeah. I had an interest in finance, and so when I finished playing rugby, I ended up moving to Australia and doing a graduate diploma in applied finance. And at that time, I ended up working for EY, which is one of the large accounting firms, global accounting firms, in a financial modelling team. And so I was basically building financial models for all sorts of things like mergers and acquisitions of companies, or working capital models to model how business' working capital is going. But one of the assignments I had was to build a commercial real estate valuation template. Yeah, and so I ended up building one of those in about 2002.
Right.
For a client, and subsequently ended up doing about 3 or 4 more of those, and became sort of each one of them was iterated and changed the way I did it, and I realised that there were lots of people who had different ideas about how these things could work, and I thought, well, eventually an opportunity popped up to build a template where I could sort of put all my thoughts and expertise into one product and then license it back. And so in about 2012 I sort of put that together. Was
that cloud based? That was
no, that was just a spreadsheet at that point in time.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And it was pretty, well, for someone in Christchurch, it's pretty early days.
Yeah.
In terms of all the sort of cloud technology stuff was opening up with Azure and Amazon. And whilst I'm sure if I was in America, I probably would have understood that opportunity a bit earlier. But being down here,
that's right,
took a while for me, and not being a software person either. So I was really just focused on putting together this spreadsheet, and then thinking, a friend of mine had sort of kicked me and said there might be an opportunity here, so if you can do this, you should give it a go.
Wow.
And so I put it together, and because I'd had quite a few relationships in Australia, and that's where the main tool is used,
right,
who were quite keen for a product. So there was a product market match there,
a demand
straight away. So I think sort of had 3 customers lined up on the back of the first build, and really that was early 2013, and from there it's just ticked away, and we've been working on the technical side of it. And
have you haven't? It doesn't sound like you've moved essentially away from the core idea, because sometimes what I've found, or talking to a couple of other people that have been in here, they've had quite a clear idea in their head of what they've been wanting to achieve and stuff, and all of a sudden they've realised in actual fact there's an opportunity just to the left of that, which I should be focusing my time on, and all of a sudden that becomes the thing. but you've kind of stayed on track, so to speak. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my understanding is, there's a global leader in this field, and they have been doing it since the late 90s or mid 90s type thing, but it hasn't been cloud based, and they're sort of migrating their product to the cloud now. And there's a couple of other players around the world who've kind of built businesses to the sort of scale we have, and so it's kind of a very niche area, and we've sort of, I wouldn't say stumbled upon it, but just it is there.
There's always room for more than one product on the market, right? There's always room for competition and things.
That's right.
Yeah,
we have some unique things about our product. I mean, the fact that we're a sort of Australian-centric product to start with helped us kind of
gave you an edge,
really, and understood the Australian and New Zealand valuation methodologies. And then, more recently we've gone up to the UK, where we've got a good handle on what they're doing up there. So our obviously goal is to try and bring all that logic together into one place for these different regions. Yeah.
Hey Steve, I have to apologise. The camera has cut out.
Oh,
but I'm going to keep on going, and we'll upload the audio. Okay. So I'm really sorry about that. Something's obviously...
That's not my good side anyway, so...
Sweet.
You could just keep scrolling the video.
Well, I could jump up and I could plug it back in and I could put it on again.
You jump
and
up,
we'll
mate.
probably get a bit more time. But
did it just go off then?
Yeah, look, both of these enormous battery power packs are...
I can come back next week.
Yeah, come back next week, Steve.
Actually, yeah, I might not be able to.
Oh,
I'm going up to the UK for a couple of weeks.
Did you use the COVID environment to expand your operations into the UK?
It was interesting timing for us because we were...
Well, carry on, Steve. Yep.
In 2020, we were looking to raise a small amount of money to help the business grow into a new region, and we'd identified the UK as that potential opportunity. And so when the plan was to establish an office in the UK and then, grow from there, test the market and grow. But when COVID hit, we had to, there was so much uncertainty. We were like, wow, it's not probably the best time to be we couldn't even get up there to launch, start an office or recruiting someone, and it became quite difficult. But what actually transpired was that people in the UK were all locked down, and so were we. So we had this wonderful opportunity where we could actually just Zoom people from into the other side of the world, and we're all sitting, both sides are sitting in their bedrooms or lounges or wherever they are, and we actually built some relationships via that, which we probably wouldn't have got access to otherwise. So in some respects, it was we ended up not doing the capital raise because most people weren't, most of the venture capital firms that were like dealing with the uncertainty and weren't interested in putting money in, so we had no real alternative anyway. So it was a nice way to start the UK opportunity. And so over the last 2 years, we've just been kind of building that. And so now we've got 3 people in the UK, and our product's looking pretty good. We've just done another iteration on it to do multi-asset valuations, which is where people own more than one property and they want to look at them as a bundle. So some of these... property, they could have 1,000 properties in their portfolio, but generally speaking, there could be 10 to 20, and so 10 to 20 assets, and you might be looking to buy a bundle of 10 to 20 to stick to your 1,000, and so it's a slightly different dynamic over there where people trade portfolios of properties rather than just a single one at a time.
Yeah.
I think that happens here too, but to a lesser extent. I think the UK is probably more sort of consolidated in terms of its ownership.
Yeah.
So you're developing a more specific product for that market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've actually, the interesting thing is we've learnt so much in doing that there's a lot of learnings going to come back to our product here as well. So it's been a really good thing to do.
Is it because it's just the age of our country? We're a relatively young kind of country and things, do you reckon? Or is it...
The ownership structure of commercial real estate?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. That's what I was kind of thinking about, that deep history in the UK. Or is it sort of turning over often enough that it's kind of keeping up with...
Yeah, I think... I'm going up to the UK in a couple of weeks' time, so I'll be able to answer that question a little bit better then. But, there are some unique differences between Australia, New Zealand and the UK. The obvious one is that they have a pretty standard lease term up there, lease sort of contract.
Oh, yeah.
And, if you look at what goes on in Australia, it's the people tend to negotiate much more around things, so there's a lot more variation in the leases, whereas in the UK, I think, there's some really big landlords, I think, that have been able to maybe everybody's kind of, because it's been around so long, has been doing this commercial leasing for 500 years or something, this is the template and this is how it's done.
Yeah,
Whereas kind of here it's a bit different.
Yeah. But that's a good thing as well, because Kiwis and Aussies, perhaps we just come out and, think of something that perhaps... Yeah, because it hasn't always been done that way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so that's exactly right. I guess it plays into the nature of Kiwis and Aussies.
Yeah. And so it's like the value that the professional real estate guys see in this is part of it to do with the time kind of that they would spend on valuating something?
Yeah, there's a few different angles to that, but essentially we aim to save people time and to give them a more robust kind of set of calculations that if they had to do it themselves or use a kind of pure web-based tool, you don't get maybe as much transparency as what you do with a kind of Excel cloud interface. So yeah, that's the primary thing.
Transparency, but time. Yeah, as well. Yeah. Transparency is the primary.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately you want to save people time and give them confidence in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I guess knowing that we are there and looking at these products all the time and getting market feedback all the time, we're trying to improve it all the time, make it better, make it quicker, and then we run up against a whole lot of constraints. Things like how much calculation stuff we have in Excel versus how much we have in the cloud engine, and how to manage those things. So everything's a trade-off.
Yeah, that's right. Is there... I mean, I just work on a whole different level, doing different things, making reusable bags and what have you. But there's this idea in the mind of the consumers that there's a perfect product. And why haven't you created it? You've created one that isn't perfect. And you're kind of like, well, yeah, it's that constant trade-off. Well, we're aiming, there's a lot of different options, and you're free to choose what you want to achieve the goals that you have, and this is the one that we're putting forward. But that can be a hard one to communicate, strangely enough. You wouldn't really think it would be.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of... my background is engineering, finance, maths-related things. And now I'm in the world, or looking at the world through the lens of, sales and marketing. And when you start looking at the markets or market segmentation of who we're selling to, if you asked each group what the perfect product is, they would say something different.
Right.
So you've got to kind of like decide where your most important group is, or if you're going to service more than one segment, how you do that in a way that meets their needs.
Yeah.
It's actually quite difficult.
Yeah. No.
So I if you ask somebody who's buying a single asset, industrial building somewhere, that's quite an easy thing mathematically to get your head around.
Oh, okay.
Versus somebody who's buying a shopping centre, for $500 million. That's actually quite a complex thing to actually assess.
Yeah, true.
Especially when you start looking at there's the whole calculations, how you calculate it, but then there's the whole assumptions about what assumptions do I use? Do I think the turnover is going to grow in these assets? Do I think the population's growing, driving the turnover? how do you account for COVID? Like, I think people were expecting that commercial assets would, plummet in value, but actually they've been quite resistant and actually held their value quite well, because people have sort of looked through the short term and looking more at, well, how does this bounce back and what does it look like? So, it's been good. It's been good to look at the assets like on a 10-year view, not what is it today.
Yeah, that's that classic sort of long-term investment viewpoint.
Yeah.
See, AI couldn't have seen that coming, right? How could have that handled COVID?
I don't know. I think everybody's still trying to learn about that.
No, that's a good point. That's a real good point, Milton.
Yeah, would have been a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
So Y2K or
War of the Worlds. Yeah.
You've had some interaction with the Asian market. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, we've got a couple of customers in various jurisdictions around Asia Pacific. So we've got some customers in Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan. So yeah, we're sort of haven't pushed really hard into those markets, because we're trying to get, to understand the product market fit is kind of important. We've chosen UK, which has got some good things about it. Obviously, the tough thing is the time zone. Dealing with, we've got half a team that are sort of, we've got a hours window kind of either end of the day to kind of catch up, and even then it's kind of 9 o'clock at night. So there's a lot of late night calls going on from somebody at some point.
Yeah, full on. Did you? Does it sort of lend itself to other people in different fields, like the project management kind of side of things, or maybe the just property? Well, obviously, at some point it can come into the property developer's life, but would they be able to use it directly, or? There
are some use cases and segments of people who want to use the product for development, and that's okay. That's not its primary or specific. Like, we're not really targeting that niche. Yeah. But it's not to say you can't use it, because at the end of the day, if you're going to build a building, it's going to be. You've got to have a view of what you think it's going to be worth at the end. So it's really good for determining that kind of assessment. And at the same time, you can actually.
So that's almost like modelling, kind of.
That's exactly. Yeah. So it's, you can put your capital expenditure in, and then look at the asset, at a future point in time. And so, I think there is definitely a use case for that. We do have a development product, but it needs some work. That one
needs some development.
Needs some more development.
Hey,
product development.
Hey, Steve, and when you come in here, and when your team comes into this little espresso bar, I often think there's two types of people in this world. One
sounds like a song.
That enjoy going to work, and maybe the other that doesn't. Your team seems pretty happy to be working for you.
Yeah.
What's the key to that? Like, how do you sort of employ people who are so enthusiastic and passionate and stuff?
Or is that's a great question. We have an amazing team. Yeah, they're really everyone's really engaged, and we've got a great environment. It's challenging. People are really smart, and they will get on pretty well. So we're really, really lucky. And Scott, our CEO, has done a great job of building the culture and of the team. And
so how many people in Christchurch now?
I think there's probably about 25. So it's grown. Yeah. It's really hard, because you hear all these stories about companies that have gone from one person to 1,000 over 3 years, and it makes you feel a little bit well, maybe we haven't done that well. But in all reality, you can only grow as fast as you can find good people, and also find the opportunity. So this is our growth rate we've got to, and we're really happy that we've grown at about 50% a year for the last 8 years. So it's been pretty phenomenal.
That's phenomenal.
It's some of those growing pains are hard, but one of the things that's made it easier is the awesome people we have.
Yeah, that is impressive. 50% a year, far out. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that is unusual. I mean, no matter, we will always compare ourselves with other people and stuff like that, and kind of look around. I'll look at another cafe in town and think, gee,
that's right.
how can they afford to do that? Something along those lines.
I know. You've got to kind of stay focused on what you're doing and not get distracted. It's kind of like the old rugby analogy where you're throwing the line out, ball in, and most of the time it's your own cock-ups that make you lose the ball.
Yeah,
and
true.
So if you just focus on what you're doing, 90% of it will look after itself.
Yeah.
I suppose rugby analogies would probably take care of you for the rest of your life.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it serves a great purpose. I mean, that's why. Have you ever employed the services of anyone to do that type of workplace kind of team building and stuff, like military type of thing? Because that crossover is huge, real popular at the moment.
We have had quite a few consultants who have helped us in the business over the last 5 years at various points in time.
Yeah,
we have. We've done an HR review just recently, and part of that we haven't really done any team. I can't think off the top of my head. We've just had some social events and things.
Yeah,
but no real army training or anything like that. But we have just recently done as part of that program, the Gallup Strength Finders program. Have you heard of that?
No, but
it's a.
Is it just a sort of a personal kind of growth thing?
It actually looks at your top. It categorised into 34 kind of different strengths, and then you answer 70 odd questions, and millions of people around the world, and have done this questionnaire, and then it pops out with what your top 5 strengths are, and it helps. It says, like, if your strength is, and one of mine is achiever, it means that when you turn up to work or whatever, you're looking for things like, I want a bunch of tasks that I can achieve and get done. Yeah. And so what that means is that other people know, I'll get frustrated if I don't have that. So other people can start to understand a bit how you operate as a person. So, working out and understanding how your team is and where their strengths are and weaknesses. Well, not so much weaknesses, it's all about the strengths. But
that's right. Yeah. No, but sometimes we have an assumption that, we might have a weakness in a particular area and we have to build it up and make it strong and make us sort of not have a chink in the armour, so to speak. Yeah. And once again, I think that goes back to this unrealistic idea of perfection or whatever, like creating a product that's perfect or bulletproof or no chink. And I think as people we're becoming more comfortable with our vulnerabilities. I don't know, or it's definitely a different workplace now to when I started working. I think out of university in 1993 too. Mm-hmm. It's quite a different. I mean, I didn't even have a computer at my desk when I started my job. I got a notebook and a pen, and I was meant to be designing, products for a company. And a computer turned up in about 1994. Like, what do I do with this? And they're like, you can hook it up to the internet. And what's that? You can get emails. Well, who's gonna email me? It's kind of interesting to see that transition.
Yeah, we live in a different dimension.
Do you guys think that we have lived in a more like that whole introduction of computers, cell phones, and what have you? Do you reckon that's gonna? It's supposedly gonna get faster and faster, right? Yeah. So we feel like we've lived through a lot, and we've had to embrace change on a massive scale. But presumably, I don't know. I mean, that's the idea, isn't it? That it gets even faster.
Predicting the future is pretty tough.
Yeah.
Come on, Steve.
I could predict an hour from now the cafe will be open, but I could be wrong.
I didn't predict that the bloody camera.
Media, right?
Yeah, it's tough. So the rate of change of technology is it increases because it's exponentially changing. So like you take Moore's law, the computer chip, it's exponentially increasing. So you expect exponentially increasing opportunities to come from that. And I think autonomous driving, what Tesla's doing with autonomous driving, there's the future.
Yeah, totally.
It makes everything else look a bit kind of
it's almost
static.
Yeah, incomprehensible. It's almost like we were talking about Moore's law last week, actually. Yeah, it's amazing.
Melissa did point out about the cars as well. Like, they perhaps would have been thinking, of how do we get a faster horse, or how do we do that type of thing? But they weren't thinking we need a car anyway. And I suppose there's things in the future which we're not thinking about. But who knows? I'm sure someone is.
Yeah.
Rest assured.
Yeah, that's right. There's so many people thinking about opportunities with technology.
Yeah.
And I think disruptions like COVID only accelerate that. So, there's been some massive advancements in probably medicine over the last 24 months in terms of, did you ever hear anything about genetic sequencing of the flu variants, or did you, there's just in vaccines and treatment of long COVID, people are starting to look into all those symptoms now, and that could have flow-on effects back into other diseases. So it's pretty amazing what happens. Yep.
I always go back to that as well. It's crazy how, and I suppose a part of that, there's that saying, never let a disaster go to waste, or something like that, or an opportunity go to waste. But a lot of these bad things that happen do provide a few kind of diamonds and stuff, and a bit of treasure which we sort of stumble upon unexpectedly through those hard times. It's crazy, eh? Well, that's cool. So ultimately, COVID for you, it had some benefits as well. Like you were saying.
We didn't anticipate it, but it did. And I think the opportunity to travel back up to the now is sort of opening up. So we're sending a few of our team up to the UK in a couple of weeks' time, and it's obviously to be able to have some of those face-to-face meetings with people that we've met over the course of the last 2 years will be fantastic.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's invaluable, that type of thing. It still comes down to relationships, right, between you and your clients. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and even though it's a big cloud-based type of thing.
Oh yeah.
And
it's like real estate's all kind of relationship based as well.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
and so it's such a massive. I mean, the commercial real estate or real estate markets are just the biggest financial market out of all of the markets globally.
True.
So it's an underserved sort of segment of the markets, and that's because it's difficult, and we find ourselves in a difficult area, which there aren't a lot of players in here because it's quite tough.
Yeah, I see.
And also it's quite slow probably in terms of technology adoption because it's tough and because it's a lot of local stuff and a relationship things as well. So, in some of the American firms, they're trying to disrupt, in the residential area. There was firms in the US trying to buy residential properties using an AI tool to determine whether it's a good value or not.
Oh, wow.
So then they're competing against people who are trying to buy the houses. You can take your view whether ethically that's good or not, but I think they've had a few hiccups with that. But and then on the other side, they're trying now to get into the real estate agents and trying to disrupt that area by channeling leads from those websites to agents. I think that's kind of always gone on, but when you start trying to scale that idea, that's where it gets hard. It's just same with Forbury. It's how do you actually take an idea which one person likes, but then scale it, and then find all the people that like it. That's actually the real hard thing. I mean, you've seen Elon Musk make references to that. About anyone can build an electric car, but can you produce 1 million of them and at a price point that people want to buy them? That's actually that's the engineering challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like there's some players which are just sort of almost like disruption is their maybe it's their end state. I don't know. they've kind of latched onto that word, and they're just wanting to perhaps grab a bit of attention by, I don't know, cat amongst the pigeons type of thing almost.
Yeah. There's a lot of noise out there. People, it's not so much the New Zealand and Australian way is to make a big noise. It's just go about your thing and do it.
Well, business ultimately is a reflection of people's personal values, right?
It is.
So it's not like you can just sort of shelve them, although in saying that, obviously heaps of people do, and that's where you get crazy sort of, businesses perhaps doing things that aren't desirable.
Well, that's a whole other thing, isn't it, about how you start something off with an intention, and then other people come along and change that intention, or over time the intention just changes just because of the nature of the markets or the things that you're serving, it can corrupt what you originally started.
Yeah, but you guys have got a pretty strong kind of vision, and sort of it seems quite tight.
Yeah, I think it is actually quite tight when you look at there's lots. We've sort of dabbled in a few adjacencies along the way, but always come back to the core. Yeah, and what are we doing and why are we doing it, and constantly aware of disruption as well, because that could happen. Someone else could come up with something that's better. Yeah, so we've just got to. All we can do really is think about that and react if it happens, or try and make our product as best we can and reinvest in it. So, it's a lot of reinvestment in what we've done to date. Yeah,
cool. That's pretty wise, I'd say. Yeah.
Are you on the cutting edge, Steve, using the Excel with the cloud base at the back?
That's an interesting question, that, because I would actually think that from that aspect, I'd say we are. I think we've used the tooling we've got in a way that not many other companies would have tried. So we've been experimenting this whole time with how we do this. So that's a really interesting observation, because some people go, "Oh, you're still mucking around with Excel, so that's actually kind of old tech."
Yeah, it sounds old, eh?
It sounds old. Well. It sounds old, but the way we're using it's kind of unique, and we don't know of anybody else doing what we're doing in the way we're doing it. So maybe that might end up being something that leads us onto something else. It might be the tech that takes us, or it might be the actual products themselves or the markets they serve. There's a kind of infinite possibilities that pop out of that, and it's about, I believe it's about staying alive long enough to actually find that possibility.
Yeah, true. Yep.
It just sounds clever as...
Yeah, no.
Well, it's like you're using something old with something like new, like the old Excel, even that was pretty new not long ago.
Yeah.
And man, everything's just evolving so quick.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, people had thought that, Excel was going to die in the early 2000s, but there's more people using it than ever. So people got that wrong, and I think it's kind of a bit of wishful thinking, perhaps, on some people's promoting the concept that it's going to die.
Yeah.
When it's such a flexible platform, actually, it's and Microsoft have evolved their product so much that it's kind of unrecognisable in terms of its features than what it was, 20 years ago.
Yep.
So it is in fact a form of database, and if you can control that database it's a really flexible database, but if you can control that database in a really smart way, you can actually do things with it that others can't.
Clever as.
Maybe we're too smart.
I don't think so. So the UK property market's huge.
Yeah, I think our sort of estimate is that it's 3 times bigger than Australia. So, and Australia, we understand, represents about 3% of the commercial real estate in terms of assets globally. So UK would be 9%. So
wow.
I think the US makes up about 40%. So if we could ever get to the US, the opportunity, but then that involves competing head to head with our major competitor.
Yeah. But that might be cool. I mean, at some point, sometimes it's best to go head to head and not sort of try and avoid that. I don't know.
Well, it's a matter of resources. There's so much to do, and even going to the UK is a hard thing because you've got to suddenly put 3 people in market. And
that's a good point.
5,
I just make coffee, Steve.
It is actually about priority. Actually, the key to I think a lot of, particularly a software business, is about developing the right priorities and putting your efforts into the right things.
Yeah.
Because you talked about it before in terms of the marketplace, but it's also the same inside the business. You've got to decide what is the thing that's actually going to move the dial, but at the same time you can't ignore all problems you've got. So you've got this real kind of tough decisions to make all the time about what you do.
Is it one of those areas where there's a whole lot of data sort of being gathered and exchanged and stuff like that? And does that have value, like, for other kind of areas? Like, would there be other companies out there interested in purchasing that data? And is there could you move in that direction? I think there's always opportunities in that space, but we've sort of made a business decision that our information is confidential, and it's confidential. Our clients' confidential information. So we've gone down the track of protecting their information. We've got ISO 27000, which is a security standard in place. So we've focused on looking after the data and making sure that we do our best job to minimise any risk of a breach and things happening. And then the flip side of that is, can you do something with that? And then could businesses come to you and perhaps advertise to your customers in a way that they,
So there are opportunities to do that. Always in the back of my mind is protecting the confidentiality of our information that we've got to look after, that we're given the responsibility to look after. So I think there is opportunities for, particularly we're now getting to the point where with our platform that there is those opportunities to maybe come through and actually deliver some additional value to our clients. So if it's value adding to them,
that's right.
Then we'll look at it. So trying to create the best experience for an analyst who's, if you turn up to work in the morning and you've got to assess that building across the road's come up for sale and you've got to assess the value of it, what's the easiest way that you can do a quick job on that to work out whether or not you want to go to the next step and maybe put in an offer? That's their internal process, and we're providing tools to help them do that. And so that particularly part of our strategy is very clear. How do you make that process as quick and as pain-free as possible?
Oh, that's cool. Far out, Steve. So when your head is not in the cloud, so to speak, I'm allowed to make jokes like that because I'm my father.
That's a good one.
I've never heard of that one.
So what else are you? How else are you keeping yourself busy?
Oh gosh. I've got 5 kids to kind of
5. Is that
look
all?
after.
Wow.
I try and do a little bit of exercise, but that's sort of fallen off the wagon again there.
Oh yeah.
Actually went for a little jog last night, first one in about 4 or 5 months. So,
cool.
But it has been, I've got to say, when you look back, it's pretty time consuming. In terms of headspace, growing a business actually takes a lot of effort and energy and time. And so, I'm a bit boring when it comes to that. And, like everybody, I've just kind of forgotten how to go out and socialise. It's been 2 years where you just kind of avoid it. And
you must have a sense of achievement, though, like with where you've come from and what you have actually achieved. Like, do you ever kind of sit back and say, hey, I'm solving a problem for people and, we're making money and all of that type of thing? Like, you must sort of feel some satisfaction in that.
I'm very proud of what we've achieved. It's been a big team effort to get to where we've got to. It's probably the Australian market has been a lot deeper than what I probably thought it was when I started the business back in 2013. I thought you might get 50 clients max out of it.
Right.
But we're sort of up to 150 now.
Far out.
So it's kind of surprised on that side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ability to get great people has just makes it so much better to go to work and you feel engaged and happy to be working with people. So that part of it I feel really proud about as well.
No, you should, man. It's
totally.
almost an anomaly. It's hard to say that word at this time in the morning. But there's so many organisations that are not like that.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's so much energy and like just waste of minds just focused on like negativity in the workplace organisation.
That is,
that's
true. You kind
everywhere.
of forget it. You kind of forget.
So to do that is freaking amazing.
You forget what it's like. Well, you don't have any sort of counterpoint to say, oh, what's it like over there? And when you start a new job, it's not till you've been in there a year or two that you start to look at things a little bit. Looking at the people around you and everything, and so it's it's great.
Obviously, like I know if I've worked in a place where you get on with the team and it's all good, you grow off each other, and it's just better for the whole environment.
Hard out. Hey, one other question. Forbury, where did that name come from? Because I did a quick Google, and I was curious to hear from you. I found that it was a little garden in the UK in front of a chapel or something or other.
Forbury Gardens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've kind of... The background to that is that my grandmother did a whole lot of research on our family tree.
Yeah.
And it turns out that my 6 generations ago, ancestors came and lived in Queenstown in the Paradise Valley. Oh. And and I was reading, she'd written a story about his life, and she gave it to me to read, and there was they built the house there, and it was called Forbury House, and they obviously, when they moved from England, they had a reasonable amount of money behind them, and they built the roads and things around Queenstown. And maybe when he died, I can't fully remember the story, but the house got moved to Dunedin, and where it was Forbury House, which became around the Forbury suburb, around the Forbury racetrack. And so when I was back in 2007, when I was still doing some consulting work, I started using the name Forbury, and then when the opportunity came, Forbury was kind of already known to be associated with me, and so in the market it seemed like a natural thing to call the company Forbury Property, and so Software Solutions, and that's how it came to be.
No, that's cool, Steve.
But
it's because it's in actual fact, it's a beautiful name in kind of a corporate world, I think.
Oh, it is.
I mean, I can't really think of other brands, perhaps, but perhaps there are.
Well,
the Forbury. It's very aesthetically.
The reason why he called it Forbury House was because he was from Reading and Forbury in the UK, so he migrated from that sort of suburb, brought the name with him, and then it's kind of come to me.
No, very good.
But it is a name that elicits, like when I read Forbury, it elicits a respect. It's got a nice polish to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey Steve, here's the menu for you to order breakfast. Here we are.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming in early, and I just want to apologise once again for the camera crapping out on me.
It's a wee bit different doing it without the
It is.
video.
I sort of feel a little bit more relaxed, and maybe I can perhaps focus more, concentrate more. But,
great questions, guys.
Oh, thanks, man.
I didn't know where you were going to go with that, but thank you. I don't think I've told that story before in that kind of way.
Yeah, that's a
cool
story.
Yeah,
thanks for asking. Hopefully that's what you were looking for, obviously.
Yeah, man.
Want to ask the question?
Yeah, totally. Sweet.
You get to